Hello and welcome everyone. We're here at Florida Closing and Escrow, and we're the only title company located in this area in Sunny Isles. However, we also have other additional offices, and we're mobile, wireless, remote, and digital. And we have a 5-star rating with the BBB. And John was voted top 50 attorneys in America. Yeah. Real estate attorney, excuse me. Okay. And we have an excellent multilingual staff, and our goal is to increase your success and assist you with closings from contract to closing, residential, commercial, in-state, out-of-state, out-of-country, and we're happy to assist and answer any questions. And at the end, I'll go over some marketing tools. But today's subject is the new as-is law. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Cindy. You're definitely going to put yours on you.
Technical issues.
Okay. Hi. Sorry.
Ready now.
Okay. Okay, so a new law started July 1st, which was 19 days ago, applied to, as I mentioned, foreign buyers, but not all foreign buyers, just from 7 specific countries. And we're going to go over what those countries are. What happens is all of these foreign buyers from these 7 countries, anytime they purchase any property in Florida, so any property anywhere in the state of Florida, they have to go through some scrutiny. We're going to talk about what that is. So what happened was they changed all purchase contracts. The as-is contract, which is the most popular, which you have in front of you, the regular residential contract, the vacant land contract, and the commercial contract. So all purchase contracts have changed. Now, what has changed? Not a lot, as you'll see in your handout. The bottom of the page is where you're going to know if you're using the most up-to-date contract. And that's where it says as is 6X. There's a 6X there. And the revision is July 2023 with the copyright of 2023. Now, if you're using Form Simplicity or any of the doc or whatever pre-filled out forms from your software, it should be updated. This is just a quick way of checking to make sure you're using the correct one. So pages 1 through 11, nothing has changed until we get to, and this is handout number 2 for everyone, until we get to page 12 of the contract, which is now 12 of 13. It used to be 12 pages long. The contract is now 13 pages long because they took this signature page from page 12, and if we go to page 13, they put it on the separate page 13, but here's what they added. This is the big change to the contract. this center box, or right above the signatures, where it says attention seller and buyer. Right? This is the change. This is the addition. And this is what it says. Conveyances to foreign buyers. Part 3 of Chapter 692, Sections 201 through 205. Those are the added sections. In part,
Yes.
limits and regulates the sale, purchase, and ownership of certain Florida properties by certain buyers who are associated with a foreign country of concern. Namely, in here, they will actually list it in the contract, so you don't have to have it memorized. But there's 7. So it's the People's Republic of China, the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Republic of Cuba, the Venezuela regime under Nicolas Maduro, or the Syrian Arab Republic. So these 7 countries. So only these 7 countries. So if you have Canadians or Italians or Greeks, business as usual for them. If they are from one of these 7 countries, it says it here, it is a crime to buy or knowingly sell property in violation of the act. So it says crime to knowingly sell property. So this is why it applies to sellers as well. If the seller knows the buyer is a foreigner and still sells it to him, the seller's kind of caught up in this act. If the buyer knows that they're a foreigner and they still try and say, no, I'm not a foreigner, and the government finds out, they can be in a lot of trouble. So that's why it's important for us to know what this law is, and to know what to say to foreign buyers and what not to say. So what you can say is, if you have a buyer wanting to buy property, you can say, are you from one of these 7 countries? You cannot say, where are you from? This is anti-discrimination laws based on foreign origin. Sharing the, okay. Okay.
John,
Yes.
What if, let's say, one of the resident of those countries have a resident card, let's say, of France, but the passport, let's say, is Russian, and they don't live in Russia. They have like resident card of the France or
Right.
England.
Okay, good question. In the next screen, we're going to kind of go over what it means to be a foreign buyer.
Mhm.
Okay, so following up on this box, basically it says that if they're from one of those countries at time of purchase, so it's not a time of contract, at time of purchase, which is the closing date, when you come here to sign, buyer must provide a signed affidavit which complies with the requirements of the acts. And then the final sentence in this box says, seller and buyer are advised to seek legal counsel regarding this respective obligations and liabilities under the act. So what you can do as a realtor is say, are you from one of these 7 countries? If they say yes, you have to next say, you need to speak to an attorney to make sure you are eligible to buy a property. That's all you can say, and that's all you should say. If you say anything like, okay, you're from one of these 7 countries, but there are exceptions, and let's go over those exceptions to see if you do qualify. If you're wrong, if you make a mistake, part of this being a crime, the other penalty is the government can take the property from the buyer. So this is a big law. So you have to be very careful, because if that ever happened, the buyer's going to say, my realtor said I could do it. Now you're in a load of trouble. So be very careful. Ask them if they're from one of these 7 countries, and these 7 countries only. And if they say yes, then you have to say you need to speak to an attorney.
What if the
Me?
closing agent gonna do the same?
What if the closing agent what?
Just gonna sign the closing statement?
Right. So the next
Even
page
though the realtor say okay?
is the
next is a
affidavit.
closing agent.
So let's go to the next page, which is the affidavit.
Excuse me, but all
Yes.
this is until the day of the closing.
At the time of closing,
You have to ask.
No. You can ask before because this is in the contract, right? But this is the only thing you can ask. It should be definitely spoken about before they come here, because then I'm going to ask them, are you a foreigner? And if they say yes, and they are not allowed to buy this property that we're at the closing for, we have to stop the closing. Then the question becomes, what happens to the deposit? Does the buyer get it back? Does the seller get it? Is it considered a default? So we're in a big mess there. So you can discuss with them even before they sign the contract. When you show them the contract, you can say, here's the law, it's right here. Are you from one of these 7 countries? No, I'm from Canada. Okay, fine, we can move forward. And you don't want to waste too much time getting to closing with that. Yes?
Do they have to sign an addendum for this all the time?
They
I
have
mean,
to
before the closing?
Before, no, but what they're going to be doing is signing the contract, which right above it says that if you're one of these 7 countries, there are restrictions and you have to speak to an attorney.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before you go to the page, next page.
Affidavit, uh-huh.
The 30, they say, attention, seller and buyer. Why does that mean the seller? Because the idea is not the buyer buying nothing, but the seller.
This applies to sellers if they're not using realtors, if the seller is just selling to an individual buyer who maybe they know is a foreigner,
Okay.
it applies to them. So they can't say, well, I didn't know about it, or my realtor didn't tell me because I don't have a realtor. It applies to them. So they have to be careful as well. Yes.
For the agent, like let's say it happened and then government found out that someone was from those countries. What's the responsibility of the agent if the property is taken away? And are we some kind of
Yes, you can get wrapped up in this. They're going to ask you what you knew and when you knew it. So if you have a relationship with that buyer, maybe there's emails regarding that, you will be drawn into this. This is a crime, so you're going to be drawn into this act. Okay, so that's where we have to be very careful. Okay, so next slide is the affidavit. So this is what the title company is going to prepare at time of closing. It's going to have their name at the top. It's going to have the legal description of the property that they're buying. And then they have to swear under oath. You'll see that they're going to sign this, and it needs to be notarized. So this is a sworn document. This is a sworn legal document that they're attesting to the fact that number 3, that they either are not a foreign principal under the law, or that they are, but they fall under one of 2 exceptions. And we're going to go over those exceptions shortly. So they're signing this at time of closing. This is a sworn document. So this is what the government's going to take to them to court and say, hey, you said that you weren't, you are. Now there's criminal charges and issues with the property. So this is a document that gets prepared.
This is only signed by the people, buyers from those countries only.
Well, good question. No, all this is now part of all closing documents for all title companies in the entire state of Florida. This is now going to be a part of all closing documents that all buyers are going to need to sign, stating that they are not a foreign principal under this act. And we're going to prepare this. You guys don't have to worry too much about it. At time of closing, we'll explain what document this is, but hopefully by then they would have been told, reviewing the contract, whether they're from one of those 7 countries. Okay, next page. Now we're going to start getting into, we know what the 7 countries are. What does it mean to be from one of those 7 countries, and what does a foreign principal actually mean? Okay, so this slide at the top, we talked about 7 countries: China, Russia, Iran, Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria. Now, what happens? What does it mean to be a foreign principal in any one of these 7 countries? And now we're looking at the second part of the page, A through E. A says if it's an actual government buying the property, that's probably not going to be a concern for us. Political party, I'm sure these governments are now knowing what the law is, and so political parties from those governments probably are not going to be contacting you. The next 3 are what really apply to realtors here in South Florida for us. a partnership, association, corporation, or organization. So LLCs or corporations that are foreign companies with their principal place of business in a foreign country is considered a foreign principal. Number D, any person who is domiciled in a foreign country of concern and is not a citizen or lawful permanent resident of the United States. So here's the big one. Any person, so any individual living, which domicile means living in a foreign country and is not a citizen, is not a US citizen, or does not have a green card.
More than 6 months?
So even
Doesn't
if
matter.
he has driver's license, social security, and work permit, and there is no green card or passport, he's
can buy.
foreign. He cannot buy.
I wouldn't say passport because I'm not adding anything to the law. The law says that if they're living in a country, they're not a US citizen or lawful permanent resident.
So he can buy.
If
He live here,
If
he can buy.
if he has a lawful permanent resident, yes.
Green card or just live here?
Permanent.
Lawful
Green card.
permanent
Green
resident.
card, green
Yeah.
card is a
Green-
minimum.
What about the asylum, pending?
Good question. That's in the next page. There's
Ooh.
there's
There's
there's more. I know,
What
there's a lot
about
to it.
LLC? What if
I have
little
a,
Okay, so Florida LLC, that's correct. That's the next paragraph. That's E. A Florida corporation or a Florida LLC that is owned by a foreign person is still considered a foreign entity. So even if a foreign person tries to open up a Florida LLC, if they're the owner of that company, that's still considered a foreign entity.
let's say that a corporation has
two
different
people?
owners and one of them is a foreign.
He has 49%.
It's considered a foreign entity, yes. It's owned by a foreign entity.
But what if
Even if
United
it's only
States citizen
one of the-
own 51% of the company?
Right, nope, still applies. They're still considered a foreign entity because it's
It
owned
says
by a foreign
controlling
entity.
interest
Yeah, so 50,
in a partnership. If the controlling interest in a partnership owned by a United States citizen.
so, right, so we're getting close to, 51%, 49%. This, as a realtor, although I like the questions you're asking, you're not gonna make those determinations.
Right.
You can't.
as a-
Because
attorney.
the law right now, as it stands, it doesn't say what controlling interest means. It's just brand new. A lot of these definitions have not been defined to us. So what you need to be very careful with is not making these determinations. Because if you do, and you're wrong, or the law changes, or tomorrow they send out a
But
definition of
controlling
controlling
interest by
interest,
itself means it's more than 50%, right?
does it?
Yeah.
Is that the only definition?
Oh.
So that's what I'm saying. So what does controlling interest mean? So be very careful. Okay. Next page. So now that we know if they're from one of these 7 countries and if they are foreign principal, what can they and what can they not purchase? The top of the page says, if a buyer is a foreign principal, Florida law prohibits them from, number 1, purchasing or acquiring any interest in real property in Florida classified as agricultural. Agricultural land cannot be sold to a foreign entity from one of these 7 countries, period. If it's agriculture, if you have a listing, you have an agricultural land, or you have a buyer wanting to buy agricultural land and they're a foreigner, they cannot buy that land. Number 2, with limited exceptions, and the exceptions are right below, and we'll go through those. Foreign principals are prohibited from purchasing or acquiring any interest in real property in Florida within 10 miles of a critical infrastructure facility or military installation. How fun is this? So now we're going to go all the way to the bottom of the page and find out what the heck is a critical infrastructure facility or military installation. Military installation obviously means something that has been defined as a military base by the Department of Defense. We have one of those down in Homestead. I think that's our closest one. The next issue is the big one. the critical infrastructure facility. What does that mean? And the definition, according to the statute, says if it employs measures such as fences, barriers, or guard posts that are designed to exclude unauthorized persons. And they list all that apply. Chemical manufacturing facility, a refinery, an electrical power plant, or a bunch of those around, water treatment facility or wastewater treatment plant, a liquid natural gas terminal, I'm not even sure if we have those around, a telecommunications central switching office, I'm sure there's a bunch of those, a gas processing plant, seaports, we have 2 of those, Miami and Fort Lauderdale, spaceport, the closest one to us is Cape Canaveral, and airports, we have a bunch of those, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and we have a lot of executive airports. So this is the hard part of the statute. Where are these? They haven't told us. The law has not specifically said where these are. There's no map. Purposefully so. I think a lot of these places, they don't tell us where they are because they are critical infrastructures. As of right now, they do not have a website. We're hoping that at some point they're going to make a website that says we can put in the address and they'll tell us whether it's within one of these critical infrastructures or not. It's not there yet. So right now we're flying a little bit blind on what this means. But again, as I mentioned, you as a realtor, you're not making this determination. The buyer, in consultation with their attorney, I'll go through all of these situations with them, and then they're going to make the determination. At this point, it's still vague, the law is not clear, whether they want to go forward with this purchase of this particular property, or if they want to wait until the law gets a little more clear, or if they want to buy somewhere else. So, oh, good.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so we go back to the top. So a foreign buyer from one of those 7 countries is prohibited from buying a property within 10 miles of these places. Number 3 says that a foreign principal is prohibited, especially if they're from the People's Republic of China, from purchasing or acquiring any interest in any real property in Florida, regardless of its classification, subject to the 2 limited exceptions below. So if you have a Chinese buyer, they can't even buy outside of 10 miles of any critical infrastructure. They can't buy anything except with the 2 exceptions. And this applies to all these foreign buyers. If you have a foreign buyer from one of these 7 countries, and they are a natural person, so they're buying it under their individual name and not under a corporation or LLC, they may still purchase 1 residential real property up to 2 acres in size if all of the following apply. A, the parcel is not within 5 miles of a military installation. B, buyer has a current verified U.S. visa that is not limited to a tourist visa, or they have official documentation confirming that that person has been granted asylum in the U.S., and such visa or documentation authorizes the person to be legally present in Florida.
Ooh.
So that's what the asylum information.
You go anyway.
I had a panic attack just a few minutes ago.
So there's still more, so we need to also apply 2 more. The purchase is in the buyer's name, who holds either the visa or the documentation for asylum. Has to be, the name has to match. And finally, D, the buyer is only entitled to 1 residential property above. So not commercial, has to be residential, and they're only allowed to have 1. They cannot buy 2 or 3 or anything like that. And then the second exception is the diplomatic purpose. That doesn't really apply here, but if someone has a diplomatic immunity, or they can buy. So finally in red here, or actually it's in black for you guys, red for me. Caution, persons who are or may be defined as foreign principals of foreign countries should consult with an attorney before purchasing or acquiring any interest in real property in Florida on or after July 1st, land acquired in violation of this law may be forfeited to the state. So as we said, if they are in violation, they're found to be a foreigner, the property can be escheated, is the word, to the state. So that's the new law. So basically, as realtors, to try and kind of simplify it for you guys, you can ask them if they are from one of these countries of concern. As we mentioned, do not say where are you from, but you can say, are you from one of these 7 countries? If they say no, okay, you'll just maybe remind them, okay, good, at time of closing, you're gonna have to sign an affidavit swearing to the fact that you're not a foreigner. So if you're not a foreigner, good, we can move on. Everything is business as usual. If they are from one of these 7 countries, you can tell them there's a new law in Florida that was passed in July that can limit your purchase of certain properties. You need to speak to a real estate attorney about your eligibility to purchase in Florida. And that's it. It's called being the source of the source. You can say, this is the law. You need to speak to an attorney about it. Do not, as I mentioned, interpret, do not make any determinations, do not go on Google Maps and try and find all the airports and critical infrastructure and see if you're not within those 10 miles. Please don't do that, because that is a recipe for disaster. But if they do speak to an attorney, you can ask them to have that attorney send you an email stating that they've gone over the law and they are not considered a foreign person. If the attorney is unwilling to do that or too busy, then you can ask the buyer to send you an email stating that they have consulted with an attorney and they've made the determination that they can proceed with purchasing a property. Get that email, save it, and then when the government comes knocking and say, hey, this person was a foreigner, what did you know? I have an email, I asked them, and I have an email from them saying that they said they weren't a foreigner. I don't know anything else. Then you should get dismissed from that
And
lawsuit.
if they say they are actually from those countries, are we allowed to ask if they have green card? Because on that case with the,
So I wouldn't. Unfortunately, I know they're going to be asking you a lot of questions, and I know realtors, you got to try and be as helpful as you can, and you try and answer the questions. But it's risky. It's just risky.
Okay,
You're
asking the-
interpreting the law is what you're doing. You have a law that's out there, and you're answering questions based on that law, and you're going to be making interpretations about the law. You're going to be acting as an attorney.
so if
Can
I
you
have,
get in trouble for doing that? Yes.
okay, so I'm working for a Russia client right now, a buyer. I'm not allowed to ask if he has green card or anything?
What documents do you have? Can you ask them?
So
If he's living in the United
remember, the
States.
green card is for an exception.
That's exception.
The actual
Within
law
countries.
says that if to be considered a foreign
you.
person, the person who is domiciled in a foreign country, so if you're saying they live there and they're not a citizen or lawful permanent resident, you're getting into
Okay.
interpretation. I would just say she needs to speak to an attorney.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think just to play it safe. Otherwise, we're getting into some
Thank you.
gray areas that you don't want to be in.
Thank you.
I know it's a lot, and just have them call me or have them call their attorney to go over what they can and can't do. But this is the new law. It's in effect. Whether there are challenges out there with the ACLU and the Department of Justice, whether it's non-discriminatory. Right now, those have not gone through the courts, so it's still effective as of today. This is the law. We have to follow it.
There
Okay.
has been some challenges to it.
Yeah, of course, there's always challenges. What I read in the actual wording of the statute was the defense that the government is using is clear and present danger. So I do know that the government has extraordinary powers when they claim clear and present danger, so they're using that. I guess they know something that we don't, which is a little bit scary that this has come about, but it is what it is, and we have to kind of.
So John, if the people, let's say they're from Russia and they have the resident card of France, they don't live in Russia for like 10 years, they live in France, what they should do?
So they have
They
a
can present it.
resident card?
Resident card of France, so they can present it. They don't live in Russia, like for 10, 15 years. They haven't been there for that long. It's an
So-
exception.
Here's what we have to do. Here's what I'm going to be doing with them. So let's say that person comes to me. My question to them is, so they're going to tell them, I'm going to ask them, are you from one of these 7 countries? They're going to say
Yes.
Russia. So my next question to them is going to be on this page where it says buyers are
Exceptions.
foreign principal. No, not exceptions
Oh.
yet. First, we have to find out if they're foreign principal. So I'm going to ask them, are you domiciled in Russia? What are they going to say? Yes or no?
No.
Domicile means live there?
Yes.
No, I
Okay.
live in France. Here's my
And
resident card.
And are you not a citizen or lawful permanent resident of the United States?
No.
So
I
they're
live in
not.
France.
Okay, so then they're considered a foreign principal, right? So now they're a foreigner. So now the next question we ask is, if one of the exceptions apply. And then I'm going to ask them, first, are you going to be buying it under your individual name? I'm not going to say yes or no. If they say no, then
They're
We
gonna
stop
say
and
advise
say-
us, please.
they're going to say what?
Advise me.
Okay, so then we're going to say you're going to have to buy it under your individual name, and it has to be residential. So I'm going to ask them, are you buying a residential
Mhm.
property? And are you only buying one? Can't buy two. And is it not 2 acres in size? So if they say yes, then the next question is it within 5 miles of a military installation? So I'm going to go through these things, and then I'm going to ask them, do you have a current verified U.S. visa that is not limited to tourism? Or you have any asylum
It
documents?
is tourism,
It's a tourism.
yeah.
Okay.
tourism. From
So
France,
then-
right? Like,
Yeah.
No.
The exception,
No,
From Russia.
Russia.
I mean, no, it's from the United States, not from Russia.
Right.
But it's a Russian passport.
right.
okay.
So it means what? What does it mean?
So then the exception does not apply to them, and they are not allowed to buy a property within 10 miles of the critical infrastructure. But the problem right now is we don't know what that critical infrastructure is, so.
All right, I just want to say thank you for joining us today, everyone in person and everyone live. And again, we're Florida Closing and Escrow in Sunny Isles, the only title company in this location. And we have a 5-star rating with the B. John has been voted in the top 50 real estate attorneys and we're here to assist you with your real estate success from contract to closing. I could be reached, Cindy Miropol, at 786-457-6832 to assist you with business development, marketing, and John and Florida Closing and Escrow is 1-800-FL-CLOSE. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to working with you, and please let us know how we can assist you in any questions. Thank you.